Happy International Women's Month. When we talk about historical movements and figures in history, oftentimes the focus is on men, and women unfortunately get overlooked in the greater scheme of things. So I figured making a video like this would be a great entry point for people to learn about the women of the past and the women of today.
Be very clear, there is a genocide going on in front of our very eyes.
And I even opened up the topic of this video up to you guys on the Instagram page and incorporated some of the most popular ones, so many thanks to you guys. And sorry if I left out any, there were a lot of choices, and I was thinking that I could always do a follow-up video, or you guys down below can comment your favorite ones and fun facts. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the most incredible women in history who didn't just stand for change but fought for it, made it happen, and made their marks with their sacrifices and determination. The Night Witches, officially the 588th Night Bomber Regiment of the Soviet Air Force, were a product of both dire need and progressive policy. With the USSR reeling from invasion in 1941, Marina Raskova successfully petitioned Stalin to form women's combat aviation units. These young volunteers, many in their teens or early 20s, were given obsolete Polikarpov Po-2 biplanes. These were crop dusters from the 1920s, slow, made of plywood and canvas, with no radios, armor, or parachutes. Stalin gave them a really bad starting hand, but also wanted international attention for the Red Army's incorporation of women into active war scenarios. However, as such with human ingenuity, their tactical innovation was born from these limitations. They would fly multiple sorties per night, cutting their engines to silently glide into enemy positions, drop bombs, restart their engines, and then make their exit. The psychological toll of this method was unable to be ignored by the German troops. They received the nickname the Night Witches due to the German soldiers comparing the sound of their lightweight planes gliding to a witch's broomstick, which I don't know how they would know that, because witches don't exist. Or do they? By the war's end, they had flown over 20,000 missions, dropping thousands of tons of bombs and incendiary shells, along with aid for Soviet troops. They proved that women could not only endure the rigors of combat aviation, but could turn technological disadvantages into a tactical signature. And due to their sacrifices, creativity, and determination, we can thank them in playing a part in defeating Nazi Germany and look back on their accomplishments with pride. Our hope is that one day our situation will change, that we women will be treated with respect, justice, and democracy. On January 1st, 1994, the Zapatista Army of National Liberation, also known as the EZLN, launched an uprising in Chiapas, Mexico to fight against poverty, neoliberalism, and the North American Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA directly endangered indigenous Mexicans by flooding the country with cheap, subsidized American corn that small farmers simply could not compete with, destroying their livelihoods. And since maize isn't just a crop but a huge part of a lot of indigenous cultures and identities, this economic collapse was also seen as an attack on their entire way of life. The Mexican government's decision to prioritize the international trade deal over its own rural citizens shattered trust and pushed communities like the Zapatistas to rebel. Led by Subcomandante Marcos, over the course of 12 days, the mass rebels seized cities and demanded counsel with the Mexican government. They also built self-governing communities that have lasted to this day, but the road has been brutally hard. The Mexican government never fully honored the peace accords and were credibly accused of having right-wing paramilitary groups kill civilians. However, where we really get into the meat and potatoes of this section is Comandanta Ramona. Before joining the Zapatista movement, she was an embroiderer who earned a small wage selling crafts, and she was initially illiterate, speaking only her native tongue, Tzotzil. She became one of the first women to join the EZLN in the early 1980s and rose to become one of its 7 founding female commanders, dedicating her life to fighting for indigenous and women's rights. She also helped draft and pass the revolutionary women's law in their autonomous zones, which guaranteed rights to participation, health, and freedom from forced marriage. Her most famous act was in 1996 when, despite being gravely ill with kidney cancer, she left Zapatista territory for the first time to travel to Mexico City and spoke for indigenous rights and women's rights in front of 100,000 people. Her presence showed the Mexican government and the people around the country that she was a living face of indigenous struggle that the Zapatistas represented. At a point, she was so popular across Mexico that vendors and markets would create dolls of her. Unfortunately, Comandanta Ramona passed in 2006, but the movement has still survived to this day. Facing the new threat of violent drug cartels encroaching on their land, the EZLN announced a major restructuring in 2023. They dissolved their public municipalities to reorganize into an even more localized form of government. The Zapatista story is therefore still not over, in that they remain a movement that has inspired other movements worldwide. The Akashinga, meaning the brave ones in the Shona language, is a revolutionary all-female anti-poaching unit operating in the lower Zambezi Valley of Zimbabwe. Founded in 2017 by former Australian Special Forces soldier Damien Mander, the group was established on a powerful premise that empowering women from marginalized rural communities could become the most effective and sustainable force for conservation. Unlike traditional paramilitary-style anti-poaching forces, the Akashinga focuses on community-driven conservation, hiring and rigorously training women who are often survivors of abuse such as single mothers or ex-wives, providing them with economic independence and a profound sense of purpose. They are trained in tactical combat, investigative skills, and wildlife law enforcement to protect key species like elephants and rhinos from the devastating impacts of poaching. And besides the positives of nature conservation and women finding newfound independence and strength, as their members earn an income, they reinvest into their families and villages, fostering local support for wildlife. This community-centric approach builds trust and intelligence networks, making conservation less confrontational and far more effective. Overall, they're a great example about how gender unity and overall working class solidarity can be applied to conservation efforts. So while we're talking about all-female units, let's move over to somewhere different in the world.
What is their reaction when they're fighting with you on the battlefield?
سر دست جن گرک نین کشتن. بر جنه بچوک دبینن، جنه وک هبون نابینن، جنه وک امبیجن دیروک نابینن.
The Women's Protection Units, also known as the YPJ, emerged in 2013 as an all-female fighting force in the socialist region of Rojava and has been an instrumental group in fighting ISIS and protecting women in the region. For the YPJ, the struggle against groups like ISIS is inseparable from a broader fight for women's liberation and the dismantling of patriarchal systems that have long defined the region. As citizens of Rojava, they believe in socialist-influenced democratic confederalism and define themselves by the slogan Jen Jian Azadi, meaning women, life, freedom. Their core mission is to build a world where women can live freely and equally, a goal they pursue by defending their land, challenging societal stereotypes, and establishing structures like women's houses to provide safe havens and support. Also, as a fun fact, a lot of ISIS fighters are scared to fight the YPJ because, in their twisting of Islam, they believe that if they're killed by a woman in battle, they'll go to hell and be denied paradise.
They believe that if they are killed by one, they will not go to heaven. Instead, they will go to hell. So if they want to go to hell, they should keep fighting us. These girls set an example to women all over the world, and we are extremely proud of them.
In more recent times, following Assad's fall, the YPJ and their allies in the Syrian Democratic Forces have faced sustained attacks from the new Damascus government, HTS, and Turkey-backed factions. The violence has centered on strategic areas in northern Syria, involving heavy clashes and advanced weaponry. Amid this escalating conflict, Kurdish forces have also accused their adversaries of deliberately destabilizing the region by facilitating the release of ISIS prisoners, which has worsened the situation. While a ceasefire and integration agreement was reached in late January 2026, the security situation still remains tense. However, the good news is that the YPJ has not disarmed, with high-ranking leaders stating that their weapons remain necessary and that they would continue to fight for the citizens of Rojava, especially women. The story of Phoolan Devi, the bandit queen in India, is one of the most interesting suggestions that I got and educated myself about. A woman from the low-status Mala class, she was subjected to child marriage, abandonment, and a gang rape sanctioned by upper caste Thakur villagers. This trauma and outrage towards the patriarchy led to her joining and eventually leading a band of dacoits in the ravines of central India. Devi and her gang would go on to primarily steal from and target upper caste landowners, affluent families, and local officials in the Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh regions of India. So basically a real-life Robin Hood. In the late 1970s, after being kidnapped and brutalized by a gang of upper caste dacoits, she was eventually rescued by the second-in-command Vikram Malla, who shot her rapist, who was the current leader of that gang. Unfortunately, later on, Vikram was murdered for this, and Devi was captured and brutalized again. All of this culminated in the infamous 1981 Bamai massacre. Seeking revenge, Phoolan and her men entered the village of Bamai, which was home to many of her upper caste tormentors. She separated the men from the crowd and, acting on intelligence that her attackers were among them, ordered the execution of 22 Thakur men. While she claimed that she was targeting specific individuals responsible for Vikram's murder and her own assault, the massacre was widely condemned as a retaliatory act of caste-based violence. After surrendering in 1983 under a negotiated agreement that led to an 11-year prison sentence, She emerged from incarceration determined to use her fame for political change. Released in 1994, she was twice elected, first in 1996 and then 1999 as a member of parliament for Mirzapur. In office, she became a fierce advocate for the poor and for women, leveraging her own traumatic history to champion the rights of those who, like her, had been silenced by caste-based oppression and patriarchal violence. And I'm sorry to say that her life was tragically cut short on July 25, 2001, when she was assassinated by masked gunmen outside her home in New Delhi. A death widely believed to be retribution for the Bemai massacre. And no matter your opinion on her or her actions, it's inarguable that she did champion women's rights and fought for what she thought was right.
Be very clear, there is a genocide going on in front of our very eyes.
In our more modern times, I would like to talk about Greta Thunberg. While most of us grew up watching her strike for climate change and her career as a staunch environmental activist, she has now also become a notable pro-Palestinian activist. Around September 2025, Greta risked her personal freedom to join the global Samud flotilla to deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza region. According to reports, the Israeli Navy intercepted the vessel in international waters, after which Thunberg and hundreds of other activists were detained and transferred to Ketziot prison, a facility typically used for Palestinian detainees. Once in custody, activists described harsh treatment. Thunberg reportedly told Swedish officials that she was held in a cell infested with bedbugs and left dehydrated, while fellow activists alleged physical abuse, including being dragged by the hair and forced to kiss the Israeli flag. And if you've watched this channel or heard my takes on Israel, none of this is surprising at all. Her detainment and the harsh conditions she and her fellow activists endured served not only as a testament to her personal bravery, but also as a direct example of the very systems of oppression that she's seeking to call out. It remains undeniable that Thunberg has used her global platform to spotlight both the climate crisis and the crisis of Palestinian sovereignty, forcing the world to confront uncomfortable questions about our planet's future, the right to protest, and the hypocrisy of geopolitics. So although she is a bit of an outlier in this video, I still think she deserves a spot, and hopefully her actions have inspired many more to keep an eye on this situation and other situations across the world. So as usual, free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, and free all the oppressed. As usual, if you got this far, thank you so much for watching. This video was a behemoth to make. I had like so many cuts. I had technical difficulties with going on a trip and the audio got messed up. I forgot my mic too. It was a lot, but it was a great learning experience. Had fun editing it. So thank you once again. Should have more commentaries coming out that aren't as long video essays, but we'll be working on those in the background. Sorry for the yap, just explaining myself. But like I said in the beginning of the video, if there's anybody I left out, which of course I probably did, it wasn't on purpose, comment down below and just, you guys can get to talking. And if this one bangs, I guess, not I guess, I'll do another video. I'll do a part 2 with all the new suggestions. So thank you, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.